All right, guys, we're live. Welcome to my show. I'm going to call this the debrief. I'm Justin, and in this video, I'm going to kind of go over kind of a testimony of kind of my background and just different things I've been through, just to give you guys a ballpark of who I am. My video, I demo guitars, amps, gear. I'm a combat veteran. I was in the Marine Corps and the U.S. Navy. I got out as an E6, Master at Arms First Class, and I spent a fair amount of time in a pretty rough place in the Al Anbar province of Iraq back in 2005 when it was pretty rough. And I went into law enforcement and led a pretty successful career so far. I've had a lot of bumps and bruises along the way ever since day one when I was born. I'm 37 years old. And without going into all the details of every little thing, I just want to give you guys enough to get a feel of who I am and build a little bit of mutual trust. And if you guys have any questions at any given time, leave a comment down below. This is going to be my new setup. I will be doing periodic demos of amps and things like that, and just gear and making some videos. I love doing that stuff. It's something that centers me and keeps me balanced in my crazy life, in my job field, and everything else in between. So real quick, I want to cheers you guys for making it through the 2020 year. I'm going to ring in the new year with a new series. It's been a crazy year for me, guys, personally as well. And I want to cheers you guys to the shutting down of the 2020 year. And we'll begin. So, starters, guys, I am from Kansas, born and raised, and I grew up in the inner city as well as in the country. My parents were divorced, and I was the oldest of what would end up being four siblings. We grew up very impoverished, pretty rough, and it's not very flattering to talk about, quite honestly. I'm going to talk about a lot of vulnerable things. I am currently a sheriff deputy, so I think a lot of you guys can relate to this stuff. I know there's a lot of political issues and there's a lot of racial tensions and just a lot of people feel that police are biased in a lot of ways, and I think some of that's merited. I think we need to have a conversation about that. There's not a lot of law enforcement officers out there discussing those things with the general public, and I think that's very important. I'm not a spokesperson for the wide world of law enforcement. I'm just a simple, humble guy. I got about 10 years of experience. I worked in a major jail for 3 years and then went on to patrol. And I've been doing this for quite a while. I had a small break. I got burnt out by it. And I had to take care of myself, and we'll get into that. But bear in mind when I'm talking about all this stuff about my upbringing, I think some of you guys will appreciate where I come from a little more, and maybe find a little bit of ground to stand next to me given my job field, because we're all in this together. The uniform doesn't make me. It never has. I've always made the uniform, and I've always tried to be better at everything I do. So with that said, I grew up in Kansas, impoverished, little white kid with blonde hair, blue eyes in the inner city. I got picked on quite a bit. I got a lot of shit. And by the way, if you're offended by cussing, I'm gonna try to keep the cussing to a minimum. I am a Marine, but I'm not gonna censor who I am for anybody. And I'm that way out when I'm dealing with the public, and I have a lot of respect in my community, because I don't fake the funk, and I never have. I've always been an authentic version of who I am, and it's not perfect, but it is who I am, and I take people for who they are, and I expect the same. And so, in growing up a very impoverished kid is was rough, and I was very embarrassed. I had, a single mother who was always kind of looking for love in all the wrong places, and she just really, for some reason, just did not know how to be a very loving mother, even though she had good intentions. I'm sure a lot of you guys have parents like that. But, later on down the road, I started feeling the effects of a lot of how I was raised, and how that, you know, traumatized me and damaged me in a lot of ways. Not necessarily damaged, but scarred me, very deeply in a lot of ways. I wasn't none of us asked to go into our family situation. We're just born into it. You don't know who your parents are until you're consciously aware, and all of a sudden you realize you got these freaking people around you, and they're either, a little better than others, and some of them are just really fucking shitty. And well, me and my mom, we've made a lot of amends, and but well, by and large, I love her to death. But she was pretty fucked up back in the day, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat that by any means. I was neglected in a lot of ways, abused emotionally, and abandoned quite a bit. She would go out. She was a drinker. She would go out and drink at bars quite a bit, and do the whole bar thing, the bar scene. 3, 4, 5 years old, 6 years old. My dad was a rock and roll guy. I mean, that's where all my amps and everything. He passed away in about 2012 in December, right around this time actually. I think it was the 26th. He passed away in 2012. But he was a country boy, and my mom and him met when he was playing rock and roll and jamming out back in the 80s. And they ended up having me. He had a contract with Capitol Records. It was a really kick-ass opportunity. I think he was kind of crazy to just blow it off. But I don't know. He said he did it because of family, and I respect that. So he had this relationship with my mom, and who was quite a bit younger than him. He wasn't completely robbing the cradle, but he, back in the day it was a little more acceptable, and she was like 17 or 18. He was like 22 or something. But he was a rock star guy and rocked out as much as he could before he settled down with my mom, who was just, my mom's side. My family comes from Germany. My grandma was straight from Germany. Her husband was in the Air Force during World War II, post World War II, and they met that way. My grandma grew up. Her name was Elvira. She grew up in. She was literally being born in a bunker while Berlin was getting bombed by the Allies in World War II, and they came here after. Fast forward, she met my grandpa way after World War II, after they grew up, and moved here, immigrated here, and started a family. My grandma was a lot of similarities with my mom. She just grew up a very rich, privileged life. And when she got here, she didn't realize what it took to be an American. It's not always easy here. It's, we have to bleed to earn our way every step of the way, and nothing's given for us. We have a lot of opportunities, and it's a beautiful country, and I'd fucking fight to the death for anybody or anywhere with anyone to preserve this country's freedoms and everything in between, because diversity is what makes this country what it is. We're all the best and worst of the whole planet, and I think that's something that makes us beautiful. and it's definitely worth fighting for. So she immigrated here, and she just was not acclimated to what it took to start over. My wife, we're separated now. That's a little spoiler alert for some issues this last year, personal issues that I went through. We're separated now. She moved out several months now, and she's going back to Ukraine. She's from Ukraine. And so my wife went through a lot of problems, a lot of the same struggle a lot of immigrants have. And it's a little side note, but I definitely understand where my grandma was coming from. She came here and fell on her face and tried to be a good mother, but she just really wasn't. She wasn't cut out for it. But she had kids anyway, like a lot of people that just probably shouldn't be parents. But fucking thank God she did, because I'm here. So she had my mom, who was the youngest. She had 3 other brothers, and my mom was a little stepchild, Cinderella. She just got her ass kicked all the time, and my grandmother neglected her quite a bit. So my mom obviously picked up a lot of those bad habits, and so fast forward, and I was born, and my dad married my mom at an early age, and they were a young couple. Next thing that it didn't work out, which happens. It was they both were just young and grew up very different, and just didn't have the tools like a lot of people to have a successful relationship. But they had me, and so my mom, being a single mom, she just was really unavailable quite a bit, and I just struggled to have any kind of relationship with her. Excuse me. But going into early childhood, she ended up working and doing all these different things as best she could, and she was just never really around. I just remember just a lot of unavailability. She was just never around. And so I was always with different babysitters and just random people getting taken to different houses and dropped off. And I just felt unbelievably insecure and not really aware of what the hell was happening. Where's my mom? Where's my security? And so that created a lot of issues, and so I grew up very insecure and imbalanced in a lot of ways. My dad, for the longest time growing up, just really wasn't around much. He was just kind of running around doing his thing, and I started going out to my dad's house, and he had remarried to a very abusive ex-wife, physically abusive and emotionally abusive, and I was out. So it was about an hour outside, or about 30 minutes outside a major city here in Kansas. 300 acres, beautiful, beautiful country home. And I would go out to my dad's house on the weekends for visitation, different things. And he would, he was a country boy. He was an awesome dude. He just had so much fire in life. He was always building stuff and being innovative and creative and building forts and building motorcycles and go-karts and just different things, very mechanically savvy. And he, just had this kind of toxic relationship with that woman at the time, she actually got in a fight with him and stabbed him in his shoulder blade one time. It's crazy. But, and one time I found myself in the middle of a fight that they had, and she swung her purse as hard as she could and ended up hitting me in my head. I went flying across the room. It was just really rough. And so I would go from that back into the inner city with my mom, who was just not there. And by this time, several years, getting older, she ended up going into, a lot of different bad relationships, being remarried again, more abusive relationships. And that's nothing, I'm not calling out anybody in this video, and I'm withholding names for a reason. But my sister was born, and she was kind of my security blanket. She's just love her to death. She's a beautiful mother now. We've overcome a lot, and she's been one of my secret, well, it's no secret at all. She's just been a very, very important influence in my life because she's was right next to me while we went through so much, and she has her own war stories as well, growing up. But with that said, she was always there, and I mean, we were. My mother was in a lot of abusive relationships, and we found ourselves in at one point in the women's crisis center. There was just all these beds with just random people and homeless people, and I remember driving our little trucks up and down the hallways, me and my sister. We were just little kids, and we didn't know where the hell we were or why we were there. And so we transitioned from there, and we moved around a lot. And my mom had established a relationship with my sister's dad, and he had a lot of good qualities as well. But for some reason, my mom, just the way she was raised, like a lot of us, her template for love and affection was just very skewed. And so she attracted a lot of really toxic people, including my dad at one point. But I mean, debatably, he, was better than most. But, relationship wise, people are just different people than when they're by themselves. For some reason, relationships bring out a lot of insecurities in people, and so they tend to act a lot different than they normally would if they were single. So down the road, I found myself just in a barrage of just being around different babysitters, and I had a lot of surrogate mothers because I would live vicariously through my friends and have these relationships with their parents, and I would spend more time over there than at my own house because it was I was longing for what a healthy family situation looked like, and I admired my friends in a lot of ways because they just were wonderful people, and their mothers, and I still am very good friends with a lot of my friends' mothers and my friends, childhood friends. And so numerous times I found myself in a lot of really tragic, unbelievably abusive situations. I seen my mom get beat damn near to death. I was at babysitters' houses. One of my babysitters was mowing the lawn with electric lawnmower once, and I was there, and she was barefoot and mowing over wet grass and ended up getting almost electrocuted. She actually did, and luckily her son, who was my friend, ran over and unplugged it while she was being electrocuted. But in my eyes, when I was that little, I thought I just saw this woman get electrocuted to death. So, and my mom she had her fits where she thumped me pretty good numerous times. One time she held me down and gave me some knuckles a few times just because I was so erratic, because I was lashing out at the way I was being raised. And so my mom went to psychologists all the time. She was always going to psychologists. It was like her thing. She always it seemed like she had malignant, she could never see any progress. It was always, she had to find something else wrong with her. And in order for that to like make her life meaningful, it was just really toxic being around that all the time because that was always the focus of everything. It wasn't ever really, it was like stealing the thunder of, hey, pay attention to your kid. They're a really special person. You should be attentive to them instead of being selfish in so many ways over things that are just part of life. People feel like shit. People have problems, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't listen and pay attention to your kids and show them the attention they need. So it's very healthy and normal. But down the road, I started getting into team sports in middle school. My mom, she progressed in a lot of ways too and had established more meaningful relationships. she met one guy in particular, and our life seemed a lot more stable. Um, she had a good boyfriend for quite a while, and by that time I was in middle school and going into high school, and I was started playing team sports and football, and just really really enjoyed kicking ass and taking names, and that was really where I got to let out a lot of my aggression that had been built up and channel it, like a lot of young men in the inner city, into something that was stable and meaningful and gave me purpose to be something more than myself, and to feel part of a team. You know, a lot of young men go into gangs, and for that reason, because, you know, a lot of these young men out there, they just don't have a family situation, and were longing for the same thing I was, you know, friendship, and you know, those types of things. And unfortunately, a lot of the inner city gangs and shit like that, all they know is their version of respect. It ends up being just toxic, because they never really had a vantage point of what fucking real respect is, or what real honor is, or purpose. And so team sports is the direction a lot of young men like me and others go into. Thank God I prayed that we had enough money and I was able to go into team sports and shit like that. And so in middle school, I went in to football, city league football, and it was awesome. I mean, I didn't know shit about football except for what I saw on TV, and I did the best I could. I started out at free safety, and then I just ended up, you know, I was just this freaking skinny white kid in the inner city, just balling, smashing people, you know, head injuries. I didn't give a shit. I just laid it out and had a blast. And so several years of being with the same team, and we progressed all the way up to high school and made a lot of amazing friends. My friend's mother took me to practice almost all the time, and I spent a ton of time with her. And she was in, I mean, for better or worse, she was in, you know, Jehovah's Witness. And so since my best friend had to go to the services, then he like recruited me and made me go. And so I spent a lot of time, you know, my eighth grade and my freshman year, just going to these services every single week at the Kingdom Hall for Jehovah's Witnesses. And that's not a knock on them. I'm not a Jehovah's Witness. I'm not part of that. I'm not going to get into my religion. I have my version of what is works for me. But at that time, it was, to my understanding, it was Christianity, and so I was learning, and I liked the fact that a lot of it was biblically based, and so I dove into that full force, and spent a ton of time really understanding the Bible, and really really understanding my spirituality at an early age. And it kind of funneled everything in from what I felt when I went out to my dad's house in the country, because I was in nature. We had a beautiful river. I spent a ton of time fishing and hunting, more or less, and, you know, shooting hedge apples and having fun and riding my four-wheeler around. And I didn't have any friends out there really, so, and none of my friends were ever allowed to go out to the country until way in my, you know, later in my high school years. So it was, for the longest time out there at my dad's house, it was just me. So I just had this sense of zen, you know, this zenful, naturistic type of transition from the city that none of my city friends really understood. And so that gave me a big perspective and really shaped my personality and my vantage point on life. And I had a lot more time to think about things, so I was with my thoughts a lot more, and it really balanced me out. So out of high school, I barely graduated. I was always chasing girls, and ended up, for some reason, I was in weightlifting class, and my buddy said, "Hey, join the Marines." And I was like, "What the fuck is that? I don't have any idea what the Marines are." He's like, "Yeah, they kick ass. They're fucking the best of the best." better sign some papers, man, because I'm heading out, and you should too. So I did exactly that. And this is for later on. We'll talk about this, but was hanging out with a college buddy of mine, and I had, he had access to alcohol, and that I found out that was something I really liked. So I started consuming alcohol, 14, 15 years old, irregularly, and then ended up realizing that was a useful tool to not feel like shit sometimes, and to really enjoy myself. Obviously started out social, but I would go over to his house all the time, and we would drink beer and watch fucking funny videos and music videos, and just laugh and play video games, and it was great. And he was a wonderful person. Spent a lot of time, he was a good mentor and a good friend. Not perfect, but for what it was he helped me out a lot, and I worked with him actually doing lawn care during the summer times. So I went in the Marines, and boot camp was fucking crazy, guys. So I'm gonna shut it off at that 25-minute video. I'm gonna leave that part as part one, my upbringing, and then we'll talk about the Marines, and then we'll talk about law enforcement. So thank you guys for listening. I know it's long-winded, but I really want you guys to understand where I come from, and where my content is. And if you have any questions, feel free. All I ask is be respectful. If you have just an honest, curious question or whatever, honestly, I don't give a fuck what you guys put, but if you put something meaningful down there, maybe somebody else will get something from it. And to be honest, we're all really just imperfect things, and some of us have figured it out better than others. That's really all it boils down to, and we're all in the shit together. So leave a comment down below. This is part one of my little testimony of life up until this point. Number two will be my boot camp and military, and I think I'll make part three my law enforcement side. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you on the next video.